Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today we're taking a look at a buffed Pokemon that in the Ultra League has a higher attack stat than Darmanitan, that actually gets faster pacing thanks to one of these season's move updates. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and #1 Cactturn fan, Dr. Stalemate, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, it goes without saying, while Cactturn may not be a Pokemon that's recommended for climbing, with this new pacing, Dr. Stalemate has some incredible sets, and along the way, catches some opponents off guard. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Shadow Cactturn in the Ultra League. Hopping into the first match, leading Shadow Cactturn into Licky Licky, and this is a matchup where it's nice to have this straight 7 pacing. Dynamic Punch, oh my goodness, the opponent, they must not have got the memo. There was an adjustment here in the cost of Dynamic Punch. Opponent with the confident no shield on 7, calling it as a Trailblaze, but that is no longer guaranteed to be a Trailblaze. Down goes Licky Licky. Opponent sends in Annihilate. We see a quick pivot into Blastoise, and the opponent sends out Leavanny. Double Leaf Blade from Leavanny is going to be able to pick up the KO. Back in comes the Cactturn. Cactturn is going to commit the shield, as of course X-Scissor would be double super effective here. There's the switch into Annihilate. Annihilate immediately met with a Shadow Trailblaze. Trailblaze is no shielded, and that damage is wild for a neutral move. Annihilate going to be firing off a Rage Fist. This is the Ultra League Lapras with a very comfortable no shield and a full farm down. Back in comes Leavanny, but unfortunately, Leavanny just has too much work to do in this endgame. Opponent realizes it, they just let the move go, and game 1 is a win. Dream lead in game number 2, Shadow Cactturn against Shadow Golurk. Opponent safe switches into Clefable, and we will see a counter switch into Blastoise. It looks like it is going to be a CMP tie here. Hydro Cannon to the Moonblast. Moonblast connects, and that is going to deal some significant damage to the Blastoise. Blastoise Hydro Cannon is going to be no shielded by the opponent. Blastoise going for another Hydro Cannon. This will not be enough to knock out, but it will get the opponent very, very low. One good thing about this team is pretty strong across the board into Golurk. So even if Switch is lost here, which it is, that's not the end of the world. Cactturn is going to get a farm down here. What might be the end of the world, though, is a Galarian Moltres. We're now going to see Dynamic Punch fired off by the Cactturn. Do they respect it? No, they do not. In comes Lapras. Opponent sends in the Golurk. I think they would have been better off staying in with the Moltres, but I think at this point they're realizing the Golurk just has nowhere to run. There's a Sucker Punch user and 2 water types. It looks like this is a CMP tie. Lapras going to respect the potential Dynamic Punch. It is going to be a Shadow Punch bait, and now we are going to see the Sparkling Aria. Opponent committing the final shield. They're throwing right away, but the fact that they committed the final shield means that Cactturn can just sweep this endgame. Look at the Sucker Punch damage. Oh my goodness. In comes the Moltres. Moltres firing off an Ancient Power, hoping for a boost, but even with a boost, they're still getting knocked out by this quicker Dynamic Punch. Dynamic Punch easily knocking out the Moltres. In comes the Golurk, and that poor Golurk gets deleted. Oh my goodness. And that is a win in game number 2. Things are getting a lot tougher in game number 3, though, as this team is triple weak to Florges. Opponent does throw their charge attack on Alignment, giving Blastoise a rollout for free. If the opponent had thrown the Trailblaze on 6, then Blastoise would have got the same amount of energy, but the Florges would actually have 1 extra Fairy Wind. We're going to see the Skull Bash and a shield from Feraligatr. Feraligatr not wanting to let that damage land. Feraligatr again giving a rollout to the opponent, unfortunately struggling a little bit with their timing. And honestly, in this instance, I do like throwing the Skull Bash on Alignment because the opponent was very likely going to throw 4 and the move there. So this way, you're actually able to guarantee some damage onto the opponent. Feraligatr does have a ton of energy. In comes the Cactturn. Cactturn, oh, this is tough because you know they have a Florges. We are going to see a shield of the Ice Beam, and Cactturn is going to get a farm down. Back in comes the Florges. Florges going to be tough for this entire team, so I don't mind staying in here and playing this out with the Cactturn. Trailblaze lands, and that damage is wild. We're going to see a switch and a catch onto the Shadow Lapras. Shadow Lapras unfortunately caught a Trailblaze bait. In the back is Gastrodon. Gastrodon really struggles going up against Lapras, but unfortunately Lapras has taken a lot of damage, which means that this is now going to be a fine matchup for the Gastrodon. Gastrodon going to be hit with the Sparkling Aria. That's going to deal some pretty significant damage. Lapras so close to the move, but not close enough. Cactturn hits the field, and this is going to be a very difficult game to win. I think Cactturn will have to go for the Trailblaze here and just try and hope for a farm down on the Florges. In my view, this is the correct play. You just have to hope that the Sucker Punches will knock out here, but the Florges, it had just enough residual energy, making it to the Trailblaze. He was able to make it very close, but unfortunately can't quite overcome the Core Breaker. We actually see a pretty nice lead for the Cactturn in the next match leading into Corviknight. These Sucker Punches add up quite significantly, and as long as shields are in play, this should be a dominant matchup for the Shadow Cactturn. Opponent is going to bait with an Iron Head. Now we will see Dynamic Punch, and this damage will be glorious if it lands. Opponent not going to let that happen, so they will end up committing the shield, and now we're going to see a catch, saving that energy on the Cactturn, catching the Iron Head bait onto the Blastoise. Blastoise gonna go for, oh my goodness, going for the Hydro Cannon, but the opponent says one good catch deserves another. They catch on a Jellicent, and Jellicent is unfortunately a nightmare for Blastoise to deal with. Blastoise can't really do much of anything here. Blastoise can just spam out the Hydro Cannons, but it just gains such little ground. Jellicent Shadow Ball will connect. There's an aggressive pivot into the Cactturn. Cactturn looking to ramp up its damage with a Trailblaze. Trailblaze connects. That's gonna fully knock out. In comes the Corviknight. Corviknight makes a move, but at this point, Dr. Stalemate is going to live or die by this Cactturn. In comes Blastoise. Blastoise going to be met with a boosted Trailblaze. This is guaranteed to force the final shield. The opponent cannot risk a boosted Cactturn damage landing that would probably one-shot. Hydro will pick up the KO. In comes the Blastoise, making it to the Skull Bash, and this will guarantee victory for Dr. Stalemate. Skull Bash connects. Opponent is going to fire off the Hydro Cannon, but they just don't have the health remaining. This will be an easy cleanup for Shadow Lapras. Shadow Lapras hits the field, and the opponent resigns the match. Picking up a pretty nice lead in the next match, Shadow Cactturn against Lapras. If shields were down, obviously Ice Beam would be devastating, but with shields up, the Psy Waves are double resisted here, so Cactturn not taking a lot of fast move damage, and that's Cacturn's preferred state of being. Oh my, the Trailblaze lands. That's huge damage. Opponent realizing they're only going to be winning the zeros. In comes a Skeledirge safe switch, and Blastoise proving that that is not a particularly safe swap. Blastoise going to be met with the Shadow Ball. Opponent full sending. We are going to see the double up on Hydro Cannons by the Blastoise. Opponent should just get knocked out here by the Hydro Cannon. They are going to let that through. In the back, they have Cradilly going for a bit of a controversial choice here, going for the resistant Skull Bash, getting the shield, and now Blastoise has buffed up its defense. Opponent continuing to overfarm. This will let Blastoise fire off a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to connect. Opponent farming up basically to 100 energy, so at this point he's more than happy to let the Blastoise go. They will go for the Rock Tomb. In comes the Cactturn. Cactturn, Rock Tomb honestly might KO. This thing is so frail. This thing is so incredibly frail. That is the biggest downside to Cactturn. Cactturn, a very fun mon to play, but the reason it's not meta is due to that extreme frailty. Rock Tomb doing huge damage to the Lapras, but Lapras is going to make it to the Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria is going to be pressuring the final shield from the opponent. They're farming up energy. They're switching into their Lapras. He's farming up a ton of energy. Opponent is going to be firing off their move. This will be able to KO the Lapras. Sparkling Aria picks up the knockout, but Cactturn is going to win this CMP tie by a mile. So Cactturn gets the fire off Dynamic Punch. Down goes Cradilly, and that's a good game. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Shadow Cactturn against Shadow Lapras. This opponent is going to switch out into Corviknight. Corviknight now going to be met with a Blastoise who sneaks a rollout through as it catches on the Sky Attack. And a saved Dynamic Punch or Trailblaze already on the Cactturn is probably going to prove extremely devastating for the opponent in the endgame. In the meantime, Blastoise doing what Blastoise does best, being an enormous damage sponge. Corviknight going for the harder hitting payback, and even the payback is not enough to threaten a farm down. Blastoise still with a comfortable HP remaining, going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. And now looking to see a potential switch out here, and now we're going to see Lapras versus Lapras. Now, of course, Dr. Stalemate not running Skull Bash on the Lapras, so we are going to see the Sparkling Aria launched at the opponent. And landing that damage before a potential Skull Bash from the opponent is quite nice. Sparkling Aria number 2 is actually reached as well, so now the opponent is deep into the red, so even if it is a Skull Bash, this should be pretty okay. The opponent, oh, they don't have it. They just go for the back-to-back Sparkling Arias, and that's very fine because there's still the Blastoise and there's still the Cactturn. Cactturn hits the field. In comes Skeledirge, and now it's going to be a race. Super effective Incinerates versus boosted Sucker Punches. Oh my goodness, the damage. Cactturn getting melted, but it makes it to a boosted Trailblaze, forces the shield from the opponent, and now the Blastoise is still available if needed. In comes the Lapras. Opponent's only hope is to try and farm down because there's still 2 shields remaining, but they cannot do so. They're going to bring in their own Lapras. They're going to concede the match, and Dr. Stalemate gets a 2 shield flex to go with that win. Bit of an awkward lead in the next match, Shadow Cactturn against Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini, a Pokemon that has not been seen in quite some time. Tapu Fini used to honestly be like top open Ultra League meta, but unfortunately time and meta shifts have not been kind. And you know what else wasn't kind? That Nature's Madness catch onto the Blastoise. Opponent is now going to send out Ampharos. Ampharos immediately met with a Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon will inflict some pretty solid damage. Ampharos continues the farm, but they farm a little bit too much, and that lets Blastoise make a second Hydro Cannon and force a shield. The opponent, oh, now that they overfarm too much, they're going for a full farm down, and this is actually going to be tricky, and the Cactturn gets its fast move denied. Oh my goodness, please fix the game. That is so tragic. Glassy Pokemon like Cactturn need all of their fast moves, so losing it is incredibly unfortunate. Cactturn is going to get a big farm down, and now in the back, we're going to see Typhlosion. Typhlosion going to be hit with the Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria, this guarantees the final shield. It's just going to knock out the opponent if they don't. They're firing off energy, and Dr. Stalemate is letting it go. He's saying, I think I can win this game with the Cactturn. Oh my goodness, do you let this go? Yes. Now it comes down to, can he avoid a catch? He should be able to do 1 Sucker Punch to be safe, and that way the middle of the Incinerate is when the charge attack is thrown. Dynamic Punch is going to KO. Tapu Fini gets Sucker Punch down, and that was a very nicely played game. Bit of a tricky lead in the next match, leading into Alolan Sandslash. The good news is that this is not Powder Snow, and the better news is that an Ice Punch was just caught onto Blastoise. Blastoise shakes off that damage like it's nothing, and out comes Feraligatr. Feraligatr striking first with a Shadow Hydro Cannon. Blastoise, this is what it was built for, absorbing hits from Feraligatr. Blastoise farming up, and now looking to unleash devastation with a Skull Bash. This will inflict way too much damage. Opponent is forced to give up a shield. Feraligatr farming up a ton of energy. Now this is a +1 defense Blastoise, and it hangs on 1 HP, making 1 final Hydro Cannon, and that's some nice damage onto the Feraligatr. In comes the Cactturn. Cactturn unfortunately getting outpaced here, so may have been a slightly better decision to bring in the Lapras. Cactturn gonna look for a farm down. Oh no, could have had the farm down, but at the last second got worried about residual energy and firing off the Trailblaze. Out comes Mandibuzz. The good news for Cactturn is Cactturn will be able to fire off a boosted Dynamic Punch, so this will inflict some serious damage. Look at that, oh my goodness. And now we have Lapras versus the Alolan Sandslash in the endgame. I know in the Great League, in this health position, it would be fine, but in the Ultra League, yeah, that was my worry. I think, unfortunately, the Sandslash is going to be in a really awkward health range to try and Psywave down. Sandslash is going to fire off the Drill Run. We are going to see the Sparkling Aria launched by the Lapras. Lapras is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. Sandslash now gets to fire off the Drill Run, and Drill Run is going to inflict some serious damage. In comes the Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz stored a bunch of energy, and now it's going to unleash it here. Aerial Ace is going to land. Lapras gets outpaced by 1 turn. Unfortunately, unable to make the Aerial Ace. It's going to get KO'd. In comes the Cactturn, and Cacturn's getting outpaced as well. Cacturn's had so many sweeps so far, but unfortunately now it's Mandibuzz's turn to reverse sweep and take the win. Hopping into the final match, it's a battle of good versus evil. The spicy Shadow Cactturn versus the toxic Zygarde. we are going to see a save switch into Blastoise. Blastoise looking to immediately bulk up in this matchup because Zygarde can take a lot of hits, but now Blastoise will be able to as well. Blastoise now going to be hit with an Outrage. Blastoise tanks that pretty comfortably. Out comes a Shadow for Alligator. Shadow for Alligator Hydro Cannon will not knock out here. We saw this earlier. This health range, it is survivable. Blastoise, oh my goodness, it's even getting to the Skull Bash. Oh my, a boosted Blastoise is a thing of beauty. Absolutely rocks the Feraligatr. Aggressive pivot back into the Cactturn, but unfortunately Cactturn is so glassy that even a resisted Hydro Cannon is something that it does have to shield. In the back, it's Typhlosion, and that's not what you're hoping to see. Cactturn firing off a Trailblaze, just looking to boost up its damage, but the opponent makes a fatal mistake. They throw energy. They had no reason to. They could have farmed down, but if they farmed down and left with 60 energy, they were just winning this game. But now, because they didn't commit to the farm down and because they let a catch happen as well, I think Dr. Stalemate is actually going to pull off this win. Lapras farming up, in comes the Zygarde, and let's send Zygarde back to the bench with an Ice Beam. Ice Beam from the Lapras connects, down goes Zygarde, in comes Typhlosion, and Typhlosion is now going to be met with the Sparkling Aria. Typhlosion farming up, this is going to be close, it's a CMP tie, but with a shield remaining, this means the game is won. The opponent has 2 attacks, but they don't get to use the second one, as Lapras gets to fire off the Sparkling Aria. Little bit of bad manners there with the undercharge, and that is a good game. All in all, these were some extremely fun battles, so many thanks to Dr. Stalemate for sending them in. He is, without a doubt, Shadow Cacturn's strongest soldier. He is actively in my Discord server, and his name in the server is Dr. Stalemate, parentheses, please tag me if Cacturn is mentioned. So it's awesome to see over the years as Cacturn has progressively been buffed more and more, seeing it actually get a lot more viable to the point now where you can use it and have some pretty okay results. It's still not a Pokemon that I'd recommend for climbing. Its moveset is so dramatically improved. Obviously, Trailblaze has been buffed, Sucker Punch has been buffed, Dynamic Punch has been buffed throughout the years, so it really has seen triple buffs throughout its time from its release up until now. But even so, that extreme stat product, so high attack, and unfortunately so little in the bulk department, does still mean it's a very difficult Pokemon to use, but I imagine a pretty rewarding one if you're able to get the alignment that you're looking for. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you have not already. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.